All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Harish Kumar. I'm the Director for Data Engineering and Architecture at RB. I've spoken to several of you guys over the last 2 days. And one of the things, I don't have my clicker. So one of the things that I realized that not a lot of you know about RB as a company. Okay, so we are about 40,000 people. This go. Yeah. So we are about 40,000. Oops. Yeah, we are about 40,000 people, and we build products for health and home hygiene portfolio. So you might not have heard of our company, but we have several products in our portfolio, which are Dettol, Durex. You might have heard of Gaviscon is pretty big in the Europe on the health side, and on the household and hygiene products, we also have Lysol, Harpic, Finish, which is for dishwashing, Vanish for laundry agents, and so on and so forth. So our products are sold in both big retail stores like the Tesco's of the world, Sainsbury's, and Walmart's, and also in about 100 other countries where it's what we call as the traditional trade channel, where essentially it's it's in many of these countries where what we call as traditional trade is essentially our smaller retailers, our next door vendors, and the street vendors, and so on and so forth. Now, today's topic is around how we have implemented a better sales execution scheme. As we go through the presentation, it's very similar to what Electrolux has done. Overall, we are all CPG companies. We are all trying to solve very similar problems. And you would be able to see some of those variations in how do we handle this compared to other CPG companies. So the traditional trade market is about 1.2 million smaller stores, vendors, and so on, and it is a very fragmented market as it stands today. It is served by a host of distributors, a host of wholesalers, sales reps, distributor sales reps, some parallel distribution happening along the way, and so on. So as it stands today, it is very difficult for us to drive the central strategies that we define as health and hygiene home products provider, where we are trying to get our consumers to lead healthier lives and happier homes overall. So it's very difficult for us to drive our central strategies across just because of the sheer volume of the stores that we have and the complexity in the logistics, where somebody else is delivering, somebody else is doing the sales, and we need to be able to control and drive those sales growth ourselves. So just to think about what a typical store looks like, it serves about 60 plus households. It's very much unlike you go in and do a self-service as you do in a Tesco store or a departmental store. You have to stand in front of the vendor, and the shop owner would probably have a helper. You ask for the products that you need, and then they go in and give the products over there. They would probably not even have as much space as it's depicted over here. So they don't know how much their inventory is. They don't typically have a inventory management system or a cash flow management system, and so on. And our sales reps have to go in the middle of the day when there are customers around, and they have to compete for the shop owner's attention to basically sell our products to the shop owner. Now, what happens in this situation is that they also have to compete with all the other sales reps for all the other different CPG companies, because these shop owners run low volumes but bigger assortments of the products that are normally available. So what happens is the key here is the relationship that the sales rep has with the shop owner becomes very key. And some of our top sales representatives have much better relationships with our shop owners. And a good margin proposition for the shop owner at that point in time becomes very key. And end of the day, uh, whoops. Yeah, and in-store knowledge essentially becomes very key. In some of our countries like India and Pakistan, where we saw there are about 400,000 stores and 146,000 in Pakistan and so on, uh, the top sales reps are very hard to find. As soon as they become top sales reps, there's a lot of attrition over there. They don't earn as much as the sales reps in the modern trade markets do. Their bonuses are very tied in through a complex set of KPIs, which are not simplified because of the complexity in distribution. So a lot of these guys move on, and we lose that in-store knowledge all the time. So in addition to that, when we look at how the stores, when we go down to a store level, when we see the different buying patterns, the buying patterns are completely disparate. So each store, this is one of the sample store that we looked at, both in terms of volumes of products that we pick up and also in terms of the assortment of products. There is no real pattern that emerges out. So what happens here is uh, most of our current forecasting mechanisms do not go to a store level for this exact reason, because any traditional forecasting models you would use, univariate analysis and everything else, is never going to work with this sort of data. So a lot of judgmental calls is used. We use high-level marketing plans, which are based on market share growth, coming out from Nielsen data and so on, to just get a high-level market share plan, which is then trickled down to a channel-level forecast. And then those forecasts are driven down to the stores based on how the sales reps do this. So based on that, we came up with saying, okay, this is a problem that we could potentially solve using AI, because there is some level of human judgment that is involved, but it's all dependent on the data that we are already currently handling. But then we set some of the objectives. The straightforward one is to drive sales growth. We also wanted to improve the product range and bring some stability in how we predict the assortments that are being sold to our consumers. We wanted to reduce the impact of attrition from the sales reps. So the in-store knowledge we wanted to keep in so that we can continue to generate stable set of orders and stable set of volumes that we wanted to drive. And eventually, this way, drive the central strategies all the way down to a store level and give more control at the headquarters. So the way we designed this was, this is the overall model where we are picking up a host of information from our third-party systems, our internal systems, and some of the manual judgmental calls. So the buying pattern you already saw. Seasonality comes from our third-party systems. Some of the initiatives and plans, like new product developments, what we want to do in terms of our newer brands that are introduced and so on. The central strategy around, do we have to optimize for growth in revenues, or do we want to optimize for margins, depending on the kind of year that we are seeing, depending on the econometrics that we are seeing overall in the markets. Phasing, we want to ensure that our products are sold in a properly phased manner, so that our supply chain strategies are intact and we are not spending too much on inventory and warehousing and so on. Some of our other objectives and constraints wherein we want to say, yes, we are good at this, but we want to ensure that we don't go too high that we start losing the business, or too low that we are not making enough. The first step in doing all of this is to figure out how each of these stores really are. So we did some levels of store clustering. We used volume, assortment, and overall revenue of the store as key features in terms of performing this store clustering. And there were additional ranking that was set up within that. We created a grid structure to see at what percentile within each of these clusters do we have each of these stores, and what is the potential of a smaller growing store to a blacklisted store, and so on and so forth. And we did a lot of that level of profiling using our revenues and sales and volumes around top 5 categories, depending on each of these countries. What we found was the ideal size of the clusters was about 4 to 5 in each of our regions within the markets. So Pakistan is divided into around 5 regions, and each of those 5 regions would have about 4 or 5 clusters each. Then we pull in all of our information and do recommend what the volume is. We apply the promotions and the trade offers that we have for that particular period that we are generating the data for, and any ad hoc incentives. So these are ad hoc incentives that we deliver through our objectives and constraints. So certain sales reps might be given additional incentives to sell even more, and we try to apply it directly here rather than going through a manual process which we cannot track. And similar to that, once we recommend the volume, we also recommend what is the right assortment to be used. Meaning, what are the kinds of different SKUs that we want to introduce into the market. So we could have we try to target about 500 SKUs in each of these markets, but out of these ranges, each of the store would probably pick about 20 or 30 of these SKUs. But then we still want to, within each of these clusters, increase our range and increase our visibility to our consumers across at least 500 SKUs of the many thousand SKUs that we have to sell. So it's also based on what is the maximum assortment that we see within the cluster of a star store, if you say, and we rank it based on the category contribution, and then based on that we say these are the different SKUs that are the best mix for this for a particular store. Beyond that, we also then bring in our central strategies to say, for this particular SKU or for this particular brand, which is a new brand that I'm introducing, I want to gain market share. So if I want to gain market share in a brand new category, I would probably do it more on maximizing my revenue. For a well-established brand which has been there for a while and people are buying our products directly, then I'm optimizing it based on what is the best margin that I can get. I would try to sell those kind of assortments and different pricing tiers based on that. And all of this then creates very simplistically what we call as the smart order. It generates the lines of code down to a store level to say, sales rep, for this week, you have to go to these stores and sell these products and this specific SKU of these products that we have at these volumes. So what this essentially enables us now is it completely removes the in-store knowledge requirement. Even a green sales rep could go into a store and say, this is the recommended order that I have generated, and make the sale fast and get out of there really quickly. And being able to compete for that fair share of the shop owner's wallet, what we have seen is when they see it being recommended by a computer, they seem to accept it fast rather than them having to do negotiations with each of those sales reps. Now, this entire process that we have, it needs to run within 6 to 8 hours. That is the window that we have each night, since we get the previous day's sales information to generating to track the compliance on what exactly the smart orders are and what more is left for the sales reps to sell during the week. Now, it worked fine, and we used Azure ML machines where we would run up clusters, run this, and bring it back down, and so on. It worked fine for about 45,000 stores, which we first piloted in Pakistan. But in India, when we had to scale, it had to go to 400,000 stores. Now, clearly, it was not sustainable for us that we are running hundreds of machines overnight, bringing it down and managing a huge operations of doing this. So that is when we said, okay, we need to get our data prep much faster, and then we need to have a sustainable solution where both our data engineers and our data scientists are able to work in the same forum so that they both get all of this information seamlessly. So what we did was we redesigned our architecture. Previous to this, we have always been an Azure stack. Previous to this, we used to use HD Insights. We used to run about a 24/7 operation to just load about 1 terabyte of data every day across 250 plus pipelines. When we decided that if we have to run this at scale, we have to improve the performance by 2 times and reduce the cost by half, because otherwise we won't be able to scale with the budget that we had. Databricks enabled us to get down and reach their objectives, especially the 2 times performance on the compute part of things. The costs are still, what do you say? The costs are still, you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt, because we have all the other different systems and various hops that we kind of have to do over here. What it also enabled us is initially when we did this test and learn and the pilot with Pakistan, our data scientists, being data scientists, they did the entire coding in R. So all the data prep work and everything was also happening in R. It barely used one node. Even if we generate hundreds of clusters, it barely used one of the nodes and so on. So when I gave it to my data engineering team, they went in and they were able to figure out how do we maximize our performance initiatives, and figured much of our data engineering can be done with PySpark, and some of the really key algorithms from a clustering perspective or from an optimization perspective can continue to be done in Spark R and so on. And we were able to improve the performance by the capability that Databricks provided us to be able to use different notebooks at different points in time and continue in a one seamless direction. So at the end of this, the outcome that we have is from pre-smart order days to post-smart order days. As I said, we no longer care about sales rep attrition in these markets. We switched our sales rep incentivization and targeting. Earlier it was, we said, okay, this is for this particular sales rep, the monthly sales target is about this much volume and this much value. And he could go in and sell whatever he wanted, and he would just go to the stores where he had best relationships and just make his volumes there. Now he actually has daily targets at a store level, so he really has to go and push our products and make it visible across all of these stores rather than just a couple of the stores that he's familiar or friendly with. MSL is our aspiration of SKU assortment in a way, as to say, what is the must-sell list, or some other companies could call it must-stock list, that the sales rep should manage. So we used to do that particular must-stock list at a channel level, meaning for this particular distributor or for this particular set of stores, all across all of these stores, as long as I have this SKU sold once, I'm okay. But now the must-stock list is at a store level, where we push our aspirations down to the store, where we want to see our products and increase our range across multiple of these stores. And previously, because of all the complexity that we had and because of the higher level of forecasting that we had and so on, we had to go across a multitude of KPIs when we were deciding the incentivization for the sales reps. And today, there are only two. So essentially, it's the smart order compliance from an MSL perspective, or how are we increasing our product range, and from a value perspective as to are we really selling that much amount of volume. Now there's still a lot of negotiation that happens between the sales rep and the shop owners, and that is where we do the compliance for value, and then we incentivize them on that particular piece. So it's very easy for them to follow, and even the new sales reps get onto it really quickly. Okay. So yeah, so that was it. I'm open to any questions and feedback in how we could have done this better. I'm very excited to learn from you guys. You had a question?
Thank you. Can I ask what the impact of the changes was? How much of a difference did it make to the sales volumes and the ranges?
So I've tried to redact a lot of some of our data science models as well as the numbers as much as I could. What it has done is this has become, especially in our developing markets, the number one sales growth driver, and our plans from a sales growth perspective has doubled up in terms of how much growth that we want to do year over year. So if you have access to our previous numbers, then you would probably be able to figure that out. So we have doubled our growth aspirations with this in India and Pakistan right now. So, and we are now planning to go into Brazil, and we are already in Indonesia, and then into MENA, which is Middle East and North Africa, where we can leverage and maximize the output of this. Yes, Peter.
So how did you find dealing with the data sets in some of these markets? Because from experience, it can be hard, to put it politely.
It is hard. Okay. But one of the key things that we have implemented across all of these markets, especially around our end customer sales, the secondary sales that we get from our distributor systems, the sales that the sales reps essentially do. We have been able to achieve this by a third-party provider called Newspage. It's essentially an Accenture product, which is the handheld. So we have been able to integrate it seamlessly onto our big data sets, big data infrastructure. So we get this information on a daily basis, and we massage this data. We clean out some of the master data management issues that you often find between UPCs products, old products using same UPCs, and so on and so forth. So we are taking up the challenge of ensuring that the master data and the data cleansing work happens on our premises. The forecast part of it, so earlier we were not even able to do that much level of forecast. So today when we are measuring back the forecast of our smart orders, where yes, it's saying out this much of volume, but is it really doing it? We are about 75% accurate towards it, and we are constantly trying to add new features, probably start introducing ML onto this, wherein things around recommending the right volumes and recommending the right assortment, especially those things. I think we will have some new machine learning concepts coming in there, where we can get the feedback which we are getting already every day and try to improvise the outputs. Yeah. Anyone else? Great. All right, thanks for attending. You guys have the rest of the conference for yourself. Hang in there.
Thank you.